Oh, okay, I guess we're live. Hello, everyone. Or no one, if no one's joining me yet. But I think we got 22 people already, so that's good. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see everybody. Let me look at my chat over here, make sure I know what to look for. I had my new camera up last time as well, but my bit rate was set really low, so it actually didn't look great. I think the shading and blurry background and focus looked good, but the bit rate wasn't good, so it was kind of choppy and stuff. And Zubin pointed it out to me. Zubin Damania, smartest guy on YouTube. So now I have my bit rate up, so hopefully it looks better. We are streaming in 4K. Also, I'm a little bit sick. I have a cold, so that explains my voice. And if I'm sniffling, blowing my nose, coughing, don't be alarmed. Don't call 911. I'm fine, but I do have a bit of a cold. So that's why I sound stuffy. Hi, Nico. Hi, Leah. Hi, Yvonne. Hi, Sandra. Kathy. Okay, make my screen bigger so I can see very well. Hey, Tony. What's up, man? Good to see you, buddy. How many of you am I going to see next month at Art of Living? Actually, I guess this month, isn't it? Yeah. Hey, Amber. Hey, Lisette. Trip to Florida was awesome. We went to Miami for a few days. One of Violet's good friends, we stayed with him. Very interesting guy. He knows like a lot about the history of Miami. And just a really cool guy. And then we went on to the Bahamas, and that was awesome. It was a blast. We stayed at an Airbnb, and the back porch was right on the ocean. The water literally came to the back porch. And when it was calm, you could see right to the bottom, and it was just gorgeous. There were a couple days where it was windy and stormy, which was also pretty cool. But you wouldn't want to jump in that water then. But it was calm enough for enough days that we went scuba diving and sat on the back porch a lot and stuff like that. It was really peaceful. It was really nice. Hey, Kate. All right. Looks like the depth of field is a little tighter on this video. More precise. It may be. Yeah. I may have adjusted the zoom slightly. Greetings from Sydney. Awesome. Hey, Gareth. I'm going to hint that there may be a retreat coming up in Australia. Possibly, maybe in the near future, not too near future, but don't hold me to that, but it's a teaser. Ireland. Hello. Tamiko. I love Ireland. Carrie. Hi there. Hey, David and Elaine. Greetings. Teresa from Chicago. Cool. Life with Kyle. Hey there. Janil. Hi. Wolfgang from Germany. Hello. Hey, Mallory. Happy to see you. Tony. Awesome. Oh, good. Yeah, that's right. I knew you were going to be there in May too. That's great. Very cool. Hey, John. Hey, Jack. East Coast of the UK. Right on. East Coast. Cool. I had to think about where that was. What city is that? Going to retreat. Janelle. Great. Hey, Brad. Lisette. Yeah, it was fun. Bahamas is fun. That's what I was talking about a minute ago. I didn't realize there were 700 islands on, that are included in the Bahamas. I think they said 35 are inhabited, essentially. Yeah, I could be wrong about that, but yeah, really neat culture, and the people, the locals, were very cool. I thought very nice, genuinely friendly people. It was great. We went scuba diving and kind of got lost a little bit. We didn't really get lost, but we were the last ones up because we got separated from the group, you know? And so, they were pretty nice about it. The boat captain was not really happy with us, but the dive master and the instructors were fine with it. They were pretty cool. They were really helpful. I'm not like a super awesome scuba diver, but, you know, good enough, I guess, to keep myself alive. But it was fun. We dove a shipwreck. That was cool. Austin, Texas. Hey, Gary. Greetings from Vancouver. Hey there. M. Fadea. Fadi. Amit. Hey there. Anu. Hello. Badillion. Love that name. Bev from Michigan. Awesome. Happy to help with Australian retreat if needed. Cool. Jonathan Wood from Montreal. Marcelo, hello, from Dallas. Hey, Katie. All right. Judy from Florida. Hello. Patrick. Retreat in Europe. I will do one at some point. Simply Always Awake will do a retreat in Europe at some point. Not sure when. Next couple of years, probably. Hey, Christina. Sunship. That's a cool name. From Brooklyn. Hello. Robin Hills. Retreat at the Omega Institute. I know where it is. I've had that suggested. I haven't looked closely at it. I do kind of already have one in the East Coast, and I think that's in the East Coast, on the East Coast. I guess North Carolina's east-ish, but maybe in the future. I don't know. I really like Art of Living. The center is awesome. It's so accommodating. They can do big retreats, small retreats. They're the easiest people to work with. They're so good. Anyone who wants to schedule a retreat of any kind, I would recommend them. Or if you want to go to any other kind of retreat, go there. It's really cool. It's a really beautiful place. Israel. Hey, Jenny. I hope everybody's safe where you are. Hey, Grace. Dallas, Oregon. Dallas, Oregon. Okay. Dallas. Not the Dallies, right? Is that the Dallies? Where like the Osho thing went down? I've been through there. Soren from Denmark. Hey. Hey, Shannon. Oh, good. Yeah. Enjoy Florida. All right. Waco, Texas. Very cool. Denmark. Hey, Kelly. Online retreat. Yes. The online retreat will be coming up. I haven't scheduled it yet, but I will. I'm working on the tech for it. I'm having somebody help me with tech. It's going to be, just looking at my schedule. It's going to be December 27th through the 31st. So Wednesday through Sunday, end of year. That will be the retreat online. So mark your calendar, and I'll announce it, obviously on my channel, and I will also announce it through the mailing list. And hopefully I'll have it up in the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks max. I'll have it up before we go to Art of Living for sure. Okay. Will's from Buckley, Washington. San Francisco Bay Area, cool. Medford, Oregon, all right. Northern Alberta, hey Bob. Way up north, huh? Where it's cold probably already. Sherry Miller, yay. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I love online retreats. I love in-person retreats, number one. Number two is online retreats. They're quite powerful. Okay. So if anyone has any questions or any topics they would like me to cover, anyone who's joining now, just understand I have a cold, so my voice is a little messed up. That's why. If I'm coughing, sneezing, that's it. Okay, other announcements. So the solid announcement is there will be an online retreat, as I said, from the 27th through the 31st, Wednesday through Sunday. And I'll announce it, and you can sign up in the near future, next couple weeks. There is the Art of Living retreat. Everybody probably already knows about that. It's at the end of this month. And then the retreat in May, if you're interested, I think there's less than 10 spots now. I haven't looked in a while. I think there still is. It's not completely full yet. It is wildhealthsummit.com, all one word, wildhealthsummit.com. You can find it to sign up there if you're interested. That's a multi-modality. It's different than my usual retreat. It's not a silent retreat, although I think it will be very powerful and transformative. It's different. There's going to be several non-duality sort of speaker teachers that can do Q&As with you. There's going to be the the group from the work, including the executive producer of the documentary, they're going to put everybody through a full 1 day. Each group will go through a full 1 day course with them, with their process, their circling process. That's going to be really awesome and powerful. There's a bunch of other modalities as well, including a hypnosis large group thing, a breathing, breath work large group, probably a panel large group. And what else do we have? 1 or 2 other things. A kind of intuitive movement dance that's based on seasons that I've done before. It was really fun. The guy who facilitates it is just amazing. So that's an announcement. And I think, the poetry contest. Maybe someone can put the link here in the comments to the video. But anyway, I have the video is called Come Share Your Poetry With Me, or something like that. You can search poetry on my channel and find the video. The video explains the contest, and underneath it has the rules. Basically, you could have 1 entry, the video, and up to 3 minutes. And when we have 25,000 subscribers, which is going to be a couple months still, then I will probably do a live and announce the winners and stuff. So I'll have a panel of people, like a handful of people, help judge the poems, and we'll rank them and we'll give out prizes. It'll be fun. Okay, those are my announcements. Let me go back up here and see what people are saying. I wonder if unconditional love can be embodied without having non-dual realization. That's a great question. Or does it come as a result of that? If I'm honest, true unconditional love only comes after deep realization. And there's a reason for that. We're wired as individuals of a species. We're wired for survival, obviously. We're going to feed ourselves before we feed the person across the world that we've never met or whatever, right? We're going to feed our children before we feed other people's children. This is how we're wired. But not only is it how we're wired, it's how we perceive reality. We perceive reality as I'm the center of my life and experience, and I'm making the choices about my life. And the closer people are to me, the more important they are to me. The farther they are, the less important they are. And that feels quite real. And in the relative sense, it is real. It's adaptive. It's important. So I'm not denying that. But a very strange thing happens with realization, especially when the sense of the subject and object kind of disappears. And it's like, all I can say is you suddenly see in a very clear and obvious way that any other individual is not more or less important than you are. And it's kind of feels absurd to posit that person is less important than you in some way. And you can't actually feel that anymore. It's very strange. It doesn't mean that you're suddenly not going to take care of your own needs. I got to blow my nose, excuse me. It doesn't mean you're not going to take care of your own needs suddenly and just give all your money away and become homeless so that you can just give out all of everything you have to feed everyone around you or something like that. It's not like that, because there is still habit force. There is still a lot of momentum to the self structure and so forth. But when that shift happens, it starts a process that is kind of irreversible, really, unless you really fight it. And some people do. Most don't. Too much. And so the process that it starts is one where it really does start realigning your life in a way that you can't really do yourself. I mean, you could imagine it. You could make vows to be a more selfless person, and you certainly can take steps in that direction. But it will hit limits, because the limit will be the self structure. It will be the sense of me being the center of everything, being the special one, being the most important one, which also comes with a lot of psychological baggage, comes with a lot of anxiety. And that's the part you don't really see without some shifts in identity. Once the identity starts to shift, you see that. Like, it's very stressful to have to maintain an illusion that you're the center of reality, that you matter more than that person or that dog or that snail. You don't, but it feels like you do, in the identity space, in where we think about ourselves and how we think about ourselves, how we process our experience through narratives and so forth. So that starts to crumble, actually. And it's funny, I was just having a conversation the other day with somebody about this, specifically about unconditional love. And, when I feel like it was a couple months after the shifts for me, because I remember the moment, but I don't remember exactly how long it was, but it was a little while after. I remember suddenly realizing that what unconditional love actually is very radical. It's very radical. And I sort of realized maybe the major reason we don't wake up spontaneously is because we actually sense that. We sense that unconditional love is just beyond us. And it's beyond us in the sense that our limited perspectives, our limited agendas, they just dissolve in unconditional love. Unconditional love doesn't really care too much about that. It doesn't not care about it, but there's not that center of you. There's not that mass of importance and narratives that put you at the center of everything. That just doesn't have anything to do with unconditional love. And so you sense that. And when you sense that, it can be very scary, actually. It can be quite fearful because you don't know what's going to really happen when you let go, right? If I were to say to you right now, hand everyone a pill, like the red pill and blue pill or whatever. This is maybe the yellow pill. I don't know. If I were to hand everybody a pill and say, if you take that pill, unconditional love is going to take your life over right now, would you take the pill? Knowing that you have no idea what that means. You have no idea what that means. Maybe you'll become a monk. Maybe you'll give up all of your material possessions and go to the most poverty-stricken place in the world and serve. I don't know if you'll do that. I'm not saying that those are the most prudent things to do from the standpoint of unconditional love, but I am telling you don't know, and you don't, and I didn't. And so you're literally entering the unknown. You're entering a very unknown space that will do whatever it does with your life. That's scary, right? I mean, to the identity structure at some level, at various levels, that's scary. So unconditional love is pretty radical. It's pretty sublime, actually. Sublime meaning just so beyond you that it gives you the sense of being minuscule, maybe, in a really awesome way. But yeah, and control, as long as the sense of subtle self sense even is there's going to be some illusion of control. And if there's an illusion of control, then you're going to try to control life, which means you're going to try to control unconditional love, and you will always know you can't. So you're living a lie every time you believe that control thought. And you some part of you knows this. Yeah. So you're playing a big game here. Like the stakes are very high in this game we're playing. It's not a game. It's just this engagement in your true nature. The stakes are high, and I'm not someone who hides that, hopefully. I don't overemphasize it. I don't try to make it sound like the most horrific, thing in the world to go through this, because it's not. But it is the most radical in a lot of ways. It's the most unknown that you're going to enter, that you could ever possibly enter in life. It's the most dramatic transformation you can make, for sure. And there are parts of this that will show you things in a way that you never thought you would see them. For instance, unconditional love being simultaneously terrifying and also truly sublime and also very right. You know what I mean? So, and that's why I occasionally make these videos that are like trigger warning, because we do come into contact with some fairly extreme experiences. A lot of them are in the emotion body, but it even gets energetic, like Kundalini, very intense energies. A lot of strange things can happen. So I just try to say that periodically so that people aren't totally blown out when it happens or really freaked out. And most people aren't now, which is good. But I do try to balance that with, this is also about total ordinariness, the ordinariness of life, not trying to turn anything into something spiritual, something special, something beyond, not making a mental construct about any, unfortunately, there's no other way to say it, but spiritual concepts. There are spiritual concepts or doctrine that are good pointers, but I caution all the time, don't turn those into paradigms in your mind, because if you do, then you'll just use that to doubt yourself, or you'll use that to project it into the future, right? Seeking. So that's my spiel on unconditional love. That was a good question, Mallory. Amber, I feel like I'm finally getting a feel for what is always here. Mm-hmm. And it feels so simple and present. Isn't that great? I know what the next word is, though. But then there's grasping for that, and it feels like I've lost it. Well, here's the good news. The grasping you feel is not grasping for that, because it can't. It just can't. It's like, to put it in a simple way, the mind or the ego or the thought system, it can't actually know that which doesn't come and go. All it can know is side effects of it. All it can know is a reflection that's a very inaccurate reflection of it, because it's not an it, so it can't actually be reflected. Yeah. So the good news is, if you notice seeking thoughts, grasping thoughts, yearning thoughts, judgment for yourself thoughts for not being in alignment or something, just see those are just thoughts. They really are. They don't stop anything from happening. They don't cause anything to happen. They don't mean anything about you, so it's helpful to see that grasping isn't really even what it looks like. Just like seeking isn't really what it looks like. Just like control isn't really what it looks like. The thoughts have a way of selling more territory or suggesting they take up more territory than they actually do. Yeah. But good for you. Feel for what is always here. It's right here, right now, isn't it? Right? Whether it's slightly obscured, whether it's very subtle, whether it's vibrating with every sense right now, synesthetically, does it matter? No, it's always here, right? It's always the case. That's it. Just keep reattuning to it, reminding yourself of it. Do the emotion work when it comes. Don't make a project of anything. Don't judge yourself. Good job. Lisette. Busy days for my family. New Year's Eve is a big thing for us, like Thanksgiving for you guys. Okay, I'm canceling the retreat. Sorry. Actually, I'm not. So Lisette, you can do 4.5 days if you want, or something. You can do 4 days. I actually like the idea of doing it on New Year's Eve, because I've never done that. But the Zen Center, and I think other Zen centers, it's a common thing on New Year's Eve to do this ritual cleaning of the temple. It's like a reset or something. They get together on New Year's Eve, which is kind of cool. That's not why I'm doing it, but I like the idea of it. Looking forward to May. Kelly. Oh, you're going to be there. Cool. All right. When is the online retreat? It'll be the 27th through the 31st. And the sign up will be up in a week to 2. Okay. I'm working on the tech for the sign up, trying to make it simpler. From Ohio, looking forward to upcoming AOL retreat. Me too. Christmas, house full. I can get to many of the events, but not all. Complete silence, impossible. It's fine. No, it doesn't disturb anyone, because there's so many people on there that people do come and go. People come and go during the rounds. It doesn't disturb anyone, because when you look at your screen on Zoom, the first ones that they're populated are the people whose face are on. The ones that are behind them are the ones who don't have video on. And then there are people who are just audio. So your screen actually is just the people who are on video anyway. But even them, they come and go or change, or, the internet drops and stuff. So there's no way to make it constantly the same group on Zoom. It's just impossible. So it doesn't bother me for online retreats if people have to come and go. I just encourage people to do what they can, to do whole days or do the whole retreat if they can, for them, but not for me or not for the retreat, because there's always going to be people coming and going, and it doesn't disturb anything. I mute everybody and stuff. Cool. Just got home from work. On my way home on the highway, I saw a truck in a big blaze of fire. Oh gosh, lots of fire trucks there. Quite a sight in the dark, I can imagine. Oh my goodness. Hope they got out. Lisette, ginger and turmeric are great for fighting cold and flu if you can tolerate spiciness and strong flavors. I might just try that. Kelly, in DK, Denmark? Don't know what that means. John? So my question is, when you recognize an emotion and you look at the disturbance, I'm supposed to not resist. But if the issue is a poor attitude, how does one accept that? Okay, 1 second. Okay. When you recognize an emotion and you look at the disturbance. So I'm not sure what you mean by disturbance. I think you might mean resistance. Like you might mean, okay, I'm feeling, say I'm noticing sadness, I'm noticing grief, I'm noticing anger, and I feel disturbance, which may mean resistance. Like something in me is going, no, I don't have time for this. I don't want to feel this, or it's not really what I'm feeling, or repression, or even avoidance, I feel like going and doing something else right away. If any of that stuff is happening, that I might call resistance. Like there's some resistance to the emotion or to fully experiencing it. So I'm going to assume that's what you mean. I'm supposed to not resist. Well, if you notice resistance, then just notice resistance. There is no supposed to when it comes to emotions. This is important. Hopefully I don't ever tell you should do this or you're supposed to do that with emotions. It's really more of like noticing what an emotional experience is, and then noticing the more intimate aspects of it, which ultimately will be sensation, feeling it. So if there's resistance, that's okay. Just notice it. Like, what does resistance feel like to you? Make a study of it. Where do you feel resistance? Like, just scan your body. When you feel resistance to an emotion, do you feel it in your jaw? Do you feel it in your neck or your throat? Do you feel it in your chest, your gut? It's different for everyone, but just notice, where is that resistance? Also notice, what is the narrative of the resistance? This is very helpful. What is the resistance saying if it could speak? What would it say? Yeah. So that's what I would recommend to start with. And don't beat yourself up for having resistance. It's just there. If it's there, it's there. You could consider it like an emotion. It's not really an emotion per se. It is a kind of reaction to an emotion, but you can treat it like an emotion in the sense that it probably will be mapped to the body sensation somehow, and it probably has a storyline to it. Noticing the thoughts, especially with resistance, is helpful because sometimes one thought can be quite buried that if you just give it a chance to be spoken, and it can actually really shift the experience sometimes. It won't always do that, but sometimes it will. It'll like release a lot of tension, and it may be something like, I don't have time for this right now. Maybe like think about it. Well, maybe I do have time actually, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it has nothing to do with whether I have time or not. The emotion's here, so be it. Sometimes it's, I can't handle it. I don't know if I can handle it. This could overwhelm me. Sometimes it's a flash or a memory of something that happened similar to this situation with an emotion, and you may have some fear that could happen again. So investigating what the story or narrative is with the emotion is very helpful as well. Good question. Okay, Sherry. When I close my eyes, either during meditation or at night, when I go to sleep, I either see a wide open space bigger than what I should see behind my eyelids. Sometimes I see images forming or dissolving. Okay. That's okay. Yeah. Just notice the labels even space and wide open and expansive and images. Just even those labels will subtly change the quality of experience. But whatever you see there is fine. Whatever you see there, what you really see there is, of course, fine. Because what you really see there is not something we can talk about. But it's there right now. You're just seeing it right now. When you really see what it is, which means it's like you're seeing from there and here simultaneously, then it's very fascinating. It's very interesting suddenly. You could stare at that for a long time. You could look at that. And you're not looking at it. You're not staring at something. It's the way I'm using the words, but it becomes very, very interesting. I can't tell you why. I can't even tell you why. It's not a secret. I just can't tell you why. Okay. Reminds me of that song, When I Close My Eyes Forever. I'm a terrible singer, especially when I have a cold. Ozzy Osbourne, Lita Ford, I think. Kathy, have recently discovered that there can be a flavor of pleasure in experience and sensations that I look to be unpleasant. Oh, of course. That I took to be unpleasant. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what happens. Things like, so in my experience, it's funny what I notice now. Like this is very common for me where there's just no internal reaction to anything happening, but it doesn't mean I don't notice what's happening. It's just, and I could even say this emotion would be here if there was an emotion here, but I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the energy of the moment of this. It's not a disassociated experience at all. It's a very intimate, penetrated experience. But I do know what emotion should be there. So for instance, like something like disgust, like I don't feel disgust anymore, almost like ever that I can think of. And I actually notice these things because I'm curious about them. But I don't notice disgust. I used to notice disgust. Disgust with like, I don't know, like an insect or something used to freak me out when I was a kid or whatever. Certain kinds of food, maybe, whatever it was. But that I know the response pattern, and I even can recognize the conditions, like the visual conditions that might trigger that, or that would have triggered it in the past. But there's no trigger here anymore with it. So it's really fascinating. So I am very acutely aware of like the emotion of conditions, the emotion associated with certain conditions. Doesn't mean I never feel emotions. Like sadness I can feel. Surprise, a kind of like happiness that's a more of a relative happiness. But like a lot of the emotions I used to be able to feel, I don't feel them, but I can see the conditions under which they would arise for sure. It's funny. Embarrassment is one like that. I don't feel embarrassed, but I know the conditions when I should. It's really funny. What I was going to say about that is, then what I noticed is in some cases, not all cases, a lot of times the things that I used to maybe would disgust me, I'm like fascinated with. So the biggest one for me would probably be something like insects or bugs or like close-up pictures of spiders and stuff. That used to make me cringe a little bit, like when I was younger. I didn't have a phobia about it. Like I didn't have an avoidance about it. I just didn't enjoy it. I could feel like an aversion to it. I don't feel it at all now. In fact, I'm totally fascinated. So I just want to look closer. It's like, wow, it's so beautiful. It's so alive, you know. This goes back to the first question I answered, where the subject-object construct drops away, and all of a sudden, like, there's not an important one at the center of experience anymore. Everything is infinitely, or not about infinitely, everything is like equally special in a way, and thus nothing is special. But it makes you just notice things differently, and like in a very direct way, you can experience things, and living things are just so, I don't know, I just feel like a lot of affectionate love for them, like a dog, like you would for your dog or your children or your partner, with like anything that crawls, moves, flies. Also, even inanimate objects often are like that. And yeah, so there you go. Like things that I in the past would have been seemingly problematic, I would want to avoid, now I'm just fascinated by. So you could say that what felt like discomfort turned into comfort, for instance. It's not like that with everything. Physical pain is still something I would avoid. However, when it occurs, it's weird. There's not a momentary, I want to say there's not an avoidance of it, but it doesn't mean like if I injure myself, I wouldn't move my hand away from what it was injuring it. But there's not, what's actually really different is there's not an internal sense of recoiling away from something, if that makes sense. It's just not there. There's not, because there's no inner place to recoil into, and that's obvious. So like the body doesn't tense up around things anymore. I noticed like simple things, like when airplanes used to take off, I never had a fear of flying. I actually enjoyed it. It was kind of an excitement thing. But I did notice when I was younger, when an airplane would take off on the runway, my body would tense up, you know, and I would imagine like plane crashes and stuff. That was very common for me. But I still kind of enjoyed the fearful experience of it in a sense. But I do remember the body would get tense. Now I notice, like when I fly, like taking off on the runway, when there's turbulence, all of it, like literally no tension in the body. The body doesn't respond at all anymore. It's interesting. And there's no fear at all. Even no thoughts about what could happen. It doesn't even register. In fact, this is terrible, but no, I won't even say it. It's kind of bad. It's like, all right, it's almost like if the plane were to crash, it's almost like a fascination with that, like what that experience would be like, you know, not that I would want that, but there's just no recoil inward. There's no tension in the body in psychologically fearful situations where there used to be. Okay. I said a lot about that, I guess. Oh, you're from North Carolina. Hi there, Jeannie. Just looking down here. The me is exhausting. Yeah, thinking about it certainly is. Yeah. Second guessing yourself all the time. Or feeling like you have to know everything that's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and being in control. And, you know, But not only that, we don't realize we're actually reacting to those thoughts. Those thoughts are just coming, but we actually react to those thoughts because we still, to some degree, believe them. If we believe those thoughts, then we're pushing and pulling on it as if we want them to disappear. Okay. Hi, Angelo. How can we discern if our reactions to life experiences, are coming from our authentic self or an aspect of the ego that may have become disassociated from, but still may be operating? Okay. So gross reactivity, which means really it's almost always a reaction to an external event in the way I'm going to talk about it. Gross reactivity can basically decline to nothing. It doesn't mean you won't take action in some cases, but you'll know the difference between feeling a reaction or feeling reactive and just taking action. You'll know the difference. And reactivity has some components to it that I think define it in one way. One is it makes you a little bit unconscious. It makes you feel like you have to react that way, like you have to defend yourself or something, but you're not physically defending yourself. It's more of a conversational thing, or even there's no conversation happening. You're in your head about it, not in that situation, and you're still thinking, I need to do this, or I need to do that, or I need to get that person to see this, or defend myself about that, or like if that's happening, and your body's reacting to it, you're feeling a physical experience. That's a reaction. Yeah. So what I'm saying is you can go through life and experience all the challenges of life, and there's always going to be challenges in life. There will be, of course. There's just going to be, no matter what. So you can encounter challenges and not feel a reaction. That's all reactivity means in the way I talk about it. Things that used to really, one way to look, one place to look for it in your life, I think, because I noticed this. I'm sure it used to happen to me, but I can't remember what space it happened in. But I noticed it in certain spaces that are just common, where people give themselves permission, in a sense, to get angry over something that just doesn't even make sense to get angry about. So driving in traffic is a common one. You know, have you ever been somebody who drives in traffic and starts getting really pissed off? But if you really look at it, it's like, what are you really mad about? Like, doesn't matter. Whoever you're looking at, the way they're driving, they're going to be gone in a second. You'll never see them again, probably. Who cares? But yet we get in a very real way, we get mad, right? In situations like that. Situations where things didn't go the way you expected them is another very common one. Being in traffic is another common one, where you just feel anxious and kind of angry, like impatience, like wanting the future to be here right now, even though that's absurd. So what I'm saying is, you can look, if you want to look for reactivity, look in these spaces where you're either not in that situation anymore, but you're still mentally reacting and physically reacting. Then you can also backward extrapolate it to the situation, because often in the situation we feel like, oh, I had to do something there. We kind of hypnotize ourselves sometimes with that. But when you're in a situation where it's very obviously there's just no need to react, and yet you do consistently, that's a really good place to start, because you can see there's just no reason to. It doesn't all it does is make you miserable, and maybe the people around you miserable, really. That's all it does. Nothing more. Yeah. But the other thing it does is it reconditions you to do it again. That's what it does. Okay. Good question. Eric, in the physical world. Okay. For a moment, I'm going to pretend I know what you mean by physical world. Let me see. I think I just lost your question. Sometimes with the comments scrolling, it jumps down a lot. Okay, here we go. In the physical world, creatures evolve, okay? But absolute is described as uncaused, okay? Unchanging, okay? Do you think the experience of the absolute evolves and changes along with the host? The absolute, okay. It's really important when I'm talking about things like this to say one thing, and this goes for everything I talk about. Anytime I open my mouth to speak about this, non-duality, awakening, all of it, every time, you have to understand, or you don't have to, but it's helpful for people to understand, everything I say is contextual, meaning it may not always make sense. And it may be the actual wrong thing in a different context, different situation, or with a different person, right? Because all concepts are in the relative world, which means they relate to other concepts. So understand that anything I say, if it's taken to be like, oh, it's always like this, if you use that to compare your experience to, or to judge other principles by, or judge other teachings by, or mostly judge your own experience by, you're misusing it. So it's really important to understand that for anyone at any time. And I say this periodically, but in this case, it's important for a couple reasons. One is because you're logical. You're a logical dude. I can tell by the way you're speaking here, which is fine. The other thing is when we talk about relative and absolute, you're not going to find something called the relative, and you're not going to find something called the absolute. But doesn't mean those terms are never useful. They can be useful depending on how you use them. They can also be misleading depending on how you use them. And I've seen them used both ways. So that's part of why I'm saying what I'm saying about context. The other part of why I'm saying it is, this is kind of a little bit about definitions here. So sometimes I'll have comments on my videos, and I like to answer any comments, I try to when I can, of course. And, but the ones that sometimes I'm inclined not to answer are people who want definitions. They're like, when you use the term no self, does it equate to anatta? Or does it equate to this fetter? Or does it equate to, something else? Or like, by awareness, do you mean this? Or they'll give me someone else's definition. So the reason I'm kind of disinclined to answer those is because if it's really just a definition thing, then you're probably misusing terminology. Misusing it meaning you're trying to put it feels like, and when I talk to people who do this a lot, it gets pretty obvious pretty quick. They're trying to build onto the framework they already have in their mind. And I'm always trying to get people to go beyond their mental frameworks. Do you see the problem? So when it comes to definitions, you always have to hold them lightly, really. At some point, you have to let go of definitions, all these frameworks, the beliefs, the understandings about all of it, relative, absolute. You have to let go of all that stuff at some point, truly. And you will, which is great. So that's a lot of preemptive discussion. Now I'm going to answer the question. And this is just how I'm answering it right now. I may answer it differently in the future. The absolute, does it evolve? No, of course not. Does it change? No, it's changeless. But it's also not unchanging. It's not defined by being unchanging either. It's not definable. Yeah. So in one sense, you can't really relate the absolute to the relative, because relationality is the relative. Yeah. And they see in that, when the problem when we talk about relative and absolute is right when we get to what I just said, the mind can't go any farther. The mind can never take the next step when I tell you, and the relative and absolute are not two. There's no way you can understand that from a logical perspective, because no one can. And yet it turns out to be true. But you can realize it. That's really important. You absolutely can realize this, but it's a very subtle realization. It takes a lot of perceptual filters being dissolved, actually, and time and patience and emotion work, in my experience. So yeah, it's a great question. I actually like these kinds of questions, but I always feel like giving disclaimers. Carrie, can you speak to the noticing that happens that is not thought or experience? Do you think I can speak to that? What can I say about it? What can I say more than what you just said? You don't need to do anything with it, right? If you know that, if that's clear with you, then just stop there. Don't ask me about it. Don't ask yourself about it. Don't think about it. Don't analyze it. Just stop. Done deal. Ryan, how much sleep do you need per night? It varies a lot. I think I've heard both Josh and Frank Yang say they only sleep 4 hours. I don't think most people only sleep 4 hours. I think some people do reduce their amount of sleep needed. I think I have, but it's hard for me to say because I do a lot too, and I stay busy when I'm up and I work, and my shifts change all the time. I work nights, I work days. So it's really hard for me to summarize that. I will say I definitely need less sleep than I used to. I can sleep 4 hours a night, 4 or 5 hours a night. But I think some people do it and they're a little bit chronically tired and don't realize it, but maybe not. With Josh, he seems like he has endless energy, and I know him. So, but sometimes, like, I do know people who sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night, and I think they are chronically tired. Meaning if you sit and meditate or something, you'll probably fall asleep. So I don't know. That's kind of how I can tell. If I'm not sleeping enough, I can function just fine. But if I sit and meditate, I'll fall asleep right away. That kind of tells me sometimes I need a little bit more sleep. So it varies for me. I can sleep 9 hours, but I don't do that super commonly. I would say average maybe 5 to 7. Okay. Lisette. Is it good practice to observe reality as the witness, to stay at least detached from the egoic self? I never talk about this witness stuff. I know some people do, an eternal witness and all that. To me, I'll just be honest and direct. I don't even know what the heck that means. That can only be a thought for me. That can only be a thought. There's, and I think with clear non-dual realization, that's probably how you will perceive, because I don't know how you could perceive it otherwise. Non-dual realization, to realize the non-dual nature of appearance, to realize that, then there's no way anything could witness anything else. How would that happen without a thought? Only a thought can make that appear. So could that be a practice that's helpful for a while? Maybe. I don't know. I don't ever recommend it to people. I never talk about it, and people wake up just fine when I'm interacting with them. So I don't think it's necessary, but hey, whatever works for anybody, fine. I really can't say it's the bad technique, but you're going to have to let go of it at some point. Good question. Kelly, it makes you want to cry. I know. It feels good to cry though, doesn't it? Emotional release is so beautiful. Anu, my question is, sitting with energy blockage in the body that seems intertwined with my breath, so it's very difficult not to touch it. Just breathing seems to change. You know what I would recommend for you? Find somebody who's really good, particularly somebody who's somewhat realized themselves, or at the very least understands realization and how it plays into energy blockages, kundalini, breathing. But someone who's an energy worker of some kind. Maybe learn TRE, and you can get a facilitator after you learn it to help a little bit, and that can unblock things. Maybe work with someone who does like craniosacral, who's very clear themselves, very present, very experienced, and has good results. Or someone who is really, really good at breath work, like a master at breath work. I think any of those may be helpful for you, but some kind of somatic or energetic modality is probably helpful. And again, TRE is very simple, straightforward. It really works wonders for some people, and you can learn it on your own. So it's something to consider. Do I think people have a true calling in life? Oh my gosh, that's such a tricky question, isn't it? I lost it again. Sorry, lost my stream here. Oh, okay. Do I think people have a true calling in life? I have the sense to say both yes and no simultaneously. Isn't that weird? So for instance, there are some things that are kind of undeniable that are coincidences that I've seen, I've experienced myself, and I've seen with other people that are just undeniable. For instance, like when I was a little kid, I knew I was going to be a doctor, and I have no idea why I knew that. I don't really know. I just knew it. It's very strange, and I told everybody that I would be. Don't know why. Other people seem to really struggle with career, like what am I going to do with my life and so forth. Don't know why. I don't know. I've definitely met people, a lot of times artists, who just knew this is what I'm going to do. I loved it since I was a kid. It's all I've ever wanted to do. I feel happy doing it. I do it all day long. That kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it seems very, very much like a calling, doesn't it? But then again, if you say everybody has a calling or should find their calling, I mean, some people that's not their thing. Like they don't have a calling like that, especially career-wise or something. And that's fine. It's totally fine. I will say though, the awakening thing is a kind of a calling in the sense that everyone here, for sure, it's the part of their calling, no doubt, because you wouldn't be listening to this otherwise. This is very off-putting to somebody who's not interested in waking up. So In a sense, that is a calling, right? It's an attunement, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Bjarki. Sorry if I said your name wrong. When I began noticing my thoughts, the future, past, internal conversation, etc., it seemed to quiet down. Yeah, it does, right? If you notice it, it quiets. However, lately I noticed that they are still there, just more subtle, but it feels just as potent. Yeah, you can also sit with that as a practice, like as part of your meditation practice, if you have one. You can sit and just the noticing of thoughts, you notice that the thoughts are noticed, right? But that doesn't mean you're a noticer. There's no witness of that. The noticing of the thoughts itself, if you follow it back to the subject, you'll notice it is also the subject. The experience of being aware is the experience of being aware of a thought. They're not two things, and there's no distance. And when you not understand that, but when you get that experientially and you can sort of meditate that way, it may feel a little dynamic in this conscious space. But if you just keep your attention in that conscious space and just keep moving toward the thoughts, you start to feel a sort of equanimity of consciousness. Also, the thoughts really settle down. Also, there's no pushing and pulling on thoughts. It's a really good way to meditate. I call it meditating with unbound consciousness. So you seem to have a knack for it, so I would go for that. You're not missing anything. Okay. It's from Jörg. My question. I'm curious about attention itself. Do you have any practices to find out what it is? Well, when you say find out what it is, what do you mean by that? Do you want a definition of it? Like really look at why do you want to know what it is? What does that mean to you? If you're trying to define it, I would say forget about it. It's not helpful. Rather just be that attention. As the attention moves, however it moves, don't make distance from it, because you really can't. I think the chapter I have in my book on attention, which I assume you've read, if you haven't, check it out. It does have some really good pointers where you can use attention as a practice, in a sense, as a tool. And it's a very, very powerful tool if you use it the right way. Emma. Hi, Emma. I'm wondering, I get lots of nightmares, and when I get resistance in conscious life, I can settle into it, but I don't have that same control when asleep. Yeah. So it's interesting because a lot of shadow work is actually done in sleep or in dreams or as you're waking up for this exact reason. The seeming conscious self, the seeming choice maker that can use a coping mechanism not to feel something, isn't there. And so, again, excuse me. So dreams are often a place where the subconscious can just come alive. What you can do is develop a healthy relationship with that space, with the dream space, meaning give it permission to show what it wants to show. And you're probably processing a lot while you're asleep, and that's okay. A lot of people do. You could, if you want, you could write them down. When you wake up and remember a dream, write it down or draw a picture so you remember it. And that tends to, even if you don't become what do you call it? Active dreaming. I can't remember the term for it. But even if that doesn't happen, lucid dreaming, even if that doesn't happen, you may start to have more of a memory of what you dreamed about and be able to bring it into consciousness a little bit when you wake up. And it may have a little bit of a archetypal message for you. It may not, but it can. Also, it may give you the opportunity to bring it into consciousness where you do have the ability to sort of bring your attention fully into the body space, into the emotion associated with that dream narrative or whatever it was. But I think it's probably a lot of work. It's good work being done when you're unconscious, or when your normal consciousness is not intact in the way it is when you're awake. Okay, Leah. I'm clarifying the understanding of self being everything. But what do teachers mean when they talk about being the creator? I don't ever say that. You notice I don't ever say that? Just what we decide how to perceive, or is it more than that? Making sense? This is one of those things that I don't feel inclined to answer because I don't want to argue with another teacher or discount another teaching that may make sense in a different context or may make sense to you. I will just say I don't use that kind of terminology. Okay. Hope that wasn't too unsatisfying of an answer. Kelly, Denmark. Oh, okay. That's what I thought. Lisette, it may be a good way to have breaks from the intense family interactions of the holidays. Yeah, totally. Talking about online retreat. Diego, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. I keep trying and trying different things to get to the shift to the point where I feel I'm giving up. I also tried one-pointed approach, but it's not resonating. Huh. What happens when you try the one-pointed approach? Like what happens? I wonder. And it's really important you understand that getting to a shift as something in the future will never happen. If that's how you're perceiving it, that's not what this is about. And I know that ties the mind up, and I know that's frustrating to hear, but it's really important to understand. The shifting is already happening. Maybe I could say it that way. Eric. Is striving to know one's true nature an effective way to address urgent issues like human-caused climate change? It's I would say it's a very indirect way, but in my opinion, it's the only real way. That doesn't mean you can force the hand of reality. Climate change is already happening, no doubt about it. Well, no doubt in my mind. No doubt in the scientist's mind. And it's affecting the world. It's affecting climates and coral reefs and all that. So it's happening for sure, right? We can't stop that. But you can never really know the long-term or distant effects of you waking up deeply. You'll never know that. Definitely never know it ahead of time. Afterward, even, it's a little bit hard to discern sometimes, but you will notice it. You'll be shown things that will convince you that, oh yeah, this is the way. The way out of human ignorance, out of human selfishness, out of the human collective causing destruction in unnecessary ways to the environment and so forth. The solution to that is always finding your own tendencies and what are the identity structures there? What is there that is bringing up the tendency for me to act selfish, to me to act self-centered, right? Going inward is really the answer. And I will tell you that it may not be obvious at first, but at some point it gets very, very obvious that you really don't need to do more than that. Or another way of saying it is, out of that fruition, action will spontaneously happen and you won't know what it is. But you may suddenly think of a new way to deal with climate change. Maybe you're an environmental scientist, maybe you're not at all. And then, you may have an interaction with someone in a way you can't imagine that will affect the way they interact with the world or policy or something. You just don't know. You can't know this, right? But that's why this takes a tremendous amount of faith in the process itself and in your own instinct. But I do think that this does address real world problems in the only real way you can. I really believe that. Good question. Mallory, recently I've experienced Kundalini. I love that I can actually see your comments this time. Last time I think I kept trying to find your comments and I couldn't. Recently I've experienced Kundalini energy, muscles contracting, twitching, throughout the night. That's intense stuff. I can't make it stop to sleep before I could consciously stop. Any thoughts? A couple things. Look into grounding exercises. Grounding exercises are very helpful. Walking through grass barefoot, laying on the grass, laying on the ground, laying on the earth or even on a floor, inviting the energy to regulate between the physical experience of the floor itself or the earth itself and the body. just asking, can you help me regulate this? Like I said to someone earlier, find somebody who's good at, like, say, cranial sacral maybe, or maybe something like Qigong, which can be quite grounding, but it is an energetic modality. Something like that I would consider. TRE can be activating, so I may not recommend that right now. But in the long run, it may be helpful to you to do TRE daily in small amounts, because then what can happen is you can discharge that energy in little bits all the time, instead of when it builds up over years and then comes forth like a tiger, which is what you're experiencing. I know it can be challenging, it can be unsettling, and even for people who know you, or like someone's in the same room with you, or friends and family that see it, they're like, whoa, it's scary, but it's okay, and it will work itself out for sure. Yeah. You may find that meditation can activate it somewhat. So some people who meditate a lot and they start getting intense Kundalini, I might tell them meditate minimally for a while, just do a little bit of natural meditation, or even movement meditation. Do meditation while moving, or do intuitive movement with the body. So that's another thing I would recommend, is try some intuitive movement, just moving slowly, slow dance, slow movement. Find something, if this resonates with you, working with your hands, like on some kind of art project, or clay, gardening, where you're actually touching the earth, touching the soil, things like that can be helpful. They can be grounding. So you may find some help through movement, actually. Let me know how it goes. Paul, what would be your opinion of post-awakening? What would be my opinion post-awakening? And the I am sense is dropped. It will drop. As Nisargadatta said. I try to pronounce it right because one of my friends corrected me, because I was saying it fast and I was saying it wrong. He said, Nisargadatta said, if you regress properly, the I am sense will disappear. And he's right. So my opinion is that's natural. That will happen. Or else it may stop making sense. But I wouldn't try to do away with it for anybody who's listening. If the I am sense, which for some people it's a very easy, obvious, direct attunement to presence, undeniable, and often it comes after a kind of awakening. If that happens with you, don't try to make it go away or resist it or anything like that. That's not skillful necessarily. Just keep looking deeper into the nature of presence itself, of appearances themselves, of the senses. Good question. Jack. Hi, I am curious why fully realized figures like Alan Watts indulged in harmful habits like heavy drinking leading to their death. I would probably say someone who drinks themselves to death is not fully realized. That's just my opinion. Maybe very deeply realized, but there's some emotional stuff that has not been addressed. I really believe that. I do think addiction is something that we have genetic proclivities for. Some people are much more likely to become addicted to substances. But I do think, and I think there are studies that show that if offered a substance versus a true, deep and trusting emotional connection, the individual will prefer the connection. So I think probably in those cases, there was some emotional work that just was not addressed at some level. That's my guess. I can't know because I didn't know him, wasn't there. Yeah. Bob, often during meditation or inquiry, or even listening to a talk, if I close my eyes, I fall asleep. It feels like avoidance. It hits like a hammer. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, sometimes not that you can help this. Sometimes the body mind, or the mind maybe, it literally will just shut off your consciousness because it's too threatened by a kind of raw presence. So you can actually use the sleep as a defense mechanism, strangely, but it's not a conscious thing. And I've seen it happen for sure. I would say, do the things to optimize meditation, like do it in the morning, do it when you're not sleepy, do it in a very upright posture, do it with your eyes open a little bit, do it with the lights on. Don't make yourself too relaxed. And you're much less likely to fall asleep. Like, for instance, in Zen, like in a sesshin or a Zendo, I think people are much less likely to fall asleep than I might see at maybe one of my retreats where I don't care what people do, they can lay on the floor. It's much harder to fall asleep when you're sitting in a very erect posture, and honestly, you're feeling a little bit of pain. Not that I recommend that, but too comfortable sometimes just equates to the mind and body to go to sleep. So give it some time, it'll change. Andres, thanks for all I share. Yeah, you're welcome. At the moment, I just look inside of trying to look. Yeah. I listen instead of trying to listen. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I look instead of trying to look. That's really good. So it sounds like a koan, right? To some people, you can hear that and you're like, what the hell does that mean? I listen instead of trying to listen. That's right. Trying is a lie that we tell ourselves. I like the quote by Dogen, ready is too late. It's kind of like that. Trying is too late. Just look. I agree with that. Man, that's so perfect. I'm going to turn off the stream, shut my channel down, take my book off the shelf. This is all you need to know is this. Look instead of trying to look. Listen instead of trying to listen. Yeah. I might even say just notice the listening that's already there. Notice the looking that's already there. Or I might just say just sound, just colors, shapes, and just what is not even the colors and shapes. Look at that. It's really fascinating. Great comment. Jonathan. Has the experience of art, music, films changed after awakening? Yeah, for me, yes. Story and narrative-based entertainment gets really boring. It's not boring because I don't actually know the feeling of boring. It's so uninteresting I can't pay attention to it. I'll say it that way. I end up just like, I'm like, wait, what's happening? What? And I'll just go do something else. So what's interesting is I find that this doesn't matter what I'm going to say. It doesn't really have to do with awakening necessarily, but it's just what I've observed. And that is, I think with art specifically, I have much more of an attunement than I used to, especially some forms of art like poetry, even film in a different way though, not because of the narratives or the action, but more because of the cinematography, the music, right? And even really good acting. But I would say with any art modality, in my experience, there's a huge spectrum of ability of the artist. And that ability is actually not an additive thing, it's a subtractive thing probably. The more hours you put in, the more you work, the more the ego gets tired of trying to co-opt the process and starts to drop. And the more you can really express genuinely, authentically, transcendent, with a transcendent expression, with a true transmission. Art can transmit. And I really do think it has a lot to do with the journey of the artist in a lot of ways, especially around the art itself. But so theater, music, visual art, acting, all of those, there are versions of it that are so good and so clear that I can just see right. It's like opening a transmission. I can see right through it. It's a pointing that's powerful. And then I can, on the other end of the spectrum, when the art depends on something that's stereotyped, especially stereotyped based on mind identification, like stereotyped relationships, stereotyped comedy, stereotyped action. It's so boring. It's so uninteresting. It's so in one way it's like opaque. That's what I found. So yeah, I used to love movies, TV, things like that. And I still really enjoy it. I watch far less than I ever did, but I'm much more selective. And I find a lot of it is not really that great. Whereas I think I used to think a lot more of it was good than I do now. And yet some things I might have overlooked before really stand out to me. Some works of art, whether it's a movie or a visual art. That's my experience. Sherry, it is very interesting and it is never the same. Yeah, right. It's also never different though, is it? Is what I'm seeing when I close my eyes the mechanism that creates the physical world I see? Well, you're making some big assumptions there, even asking the question that there is a physical world, that you're seeing it, and that there's a mechanism. Those are the three assumptions you're making. What does reality look like? Reality meaning what do you see when you take those away? When there's no process, no one seeing it, and no world being seen. Those are the questions to ask yourself. Keep working with it. Paul D. You were speaking about reactivity. All right. Sorry. You were speaking about reactivity. Reactivity has gone away typically to people being a way that would trigger it in the past. Great. Like yelling your judgment. What is the word you use for that? I mean, I might call it equanimity if you don't see any reactivity at all. But what life is really good at is finding you situations that can be challenging for you. So that's one of those ones that always keep in your shirt pocket that you may not be done with it. Because sometimes it's just a matter of conditions. Some person pops up, some situation pops up that triggers something you hadn't experienced for years. Yeah. Becky. I started letting bugs out of the house instead of squishing them. Yeah, me too. Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. I mean, I will smack a mosquito if it's sucking my blood out. I don't feel bad about it. It feels natural to do that. Or brush them off if I see them. But if it's where I can't reach, I smack them. But anything else, I mean, it's not hurting me. It's easy. They're usually easy to get out of the house. Flies, I don't care. I just let them fly around. They usually don't live that long anyway, I think. But yeah, like things I see on the walls, like mosquito or bug on the floor, like spiders. I have a bug vacuum. It's not a high, it's a low suction vacuum, and it has a clear chamber, and you can suck them into it pretty easily. And then you just put a cap on and walk outside and let them go, and they're always fine. It doesn't kill them or anything. That's what I use. Patrick, how do I know when shadow work post an initial shift is needed, or when I could be hiding in it, as it feels familiar to someone who has done lots of therapy in the past 12 step recovery over the years? It's a good question. I mean, if you've done a lot of work, I would almost think you kind of know the answer, but I don't know. So the answer would be when it comes, right? When you feel intense emotions, when you feel like distracting yourself, if you've been through 12 steps, maybe you haven't used it in a long time, and that's great, but you probably still have the thought on occasion. So why? If the thought comes, like, I could go smoke a joint or whatever. Often you can look back and go, wait a minute, what even made me felt slightly triggered there? Oh, it was the person said so-and-so said this to me, and right. So you can always still track down subtle triggers even when you're not reacting in the sense of using a substance or whatever. So things like that, anything that puts you in your head, anything that makes you upset, even about the world. That one's a tricky one because sometimes you get really upset about something happening in the world. But if you look closely enough, you're not as upset about it as you think. But you're upset about something, and often it has to do with you. That can be a little harder to track down, though, because it sure feels like it's what you read on the news or that politician. But these are all areas to look in when they pop up, when they come up. But usually it comes to you. I wouldn't get too sidetracked with it in the sense that if you've done this much work, you know when you need to do it, and now you can trust yourself. Now's the time when you can trust yourself that just relax, enjoy your life, just do what you're going to do, and be present, enjoy that, and whatever, knowing that you'll know when it's time to do some work. Yeah, so I think for you, it's more like trust yourself, that you'll know. Okay. Now that you mentioned not feeling disgust anymore, no reactions, I wonder if that's something you can work at specifically. Oh, for sure. Totally. It's like, I mean, honestly, they do this with phobias even, that it's exposure therapy. But with a phobia, you have to do it extremely slowly. Like if you have a phobia of spiders, then you just imagine a spider for a moment. Then you imagine it longer. Then you may look a picture up on the internet. Maybe you can't even look at the picture. You just print it out, set it aside, and after a while you're like, oh, yeah, I think I can look at that picture. And you look at it, right? And you just kind of escalate what you're doing. But yeah, if it's just like, I feel disgust about bugs or something, go to a place where you can observe bugs. There's a place in Colorado where you can hold a tarantula. It's really fun. So things like that, depending on how challenging it is for you. But just look closer, look close enough. I think Gangaji said this once. I think she said she was talking to her maybe a grandchild or something. And they said they were afraid of bugs. And she said, oh, you're only afraid of them because you haven't looked closely enough. Look closer. And then just keep looking closer. At some point, you won't be scared anymore. I think that's true. No worries about being fascinated with a plane crash. Totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah. Not that I want it to happen or anything, but, Gareth, the mind says, I want that. No recoiling, fear of plane crashes, etc. Sounds great, but I think it's not something you can get. Well, it's not like you can, I wouldn't make that your goal necessarily, but you can make, like breaking the fetters, the fourth and fifth fetter, for instance. Reactivity is associated with desire and aversion, or desire and ill will. You can make a practice of that, but I would definitely wait till there's an awakening of some kind, a shift in identity, to really take that up, because, actually do whatever you want. But I think people will hit a wall with that pretty quick without a shift in identity, because it's so ingrained in our behaviors. Like reactivity is so ingrained in our behaviors, our communication style, our everything, the way we interact with people all the time, that it can be hard to get at. But you can make a study of that. But even then, I wouldn't make a goal of what you heard Angelo say or something. I would make the goal in studying reactivity. The goal is actually the opposite. It's very counterintuitive. This is another reason why awakening helps a lot, because otherwise it sounds insane. But it's actually to find the discomfort itself, to find the discomfort, the space of discomfort that is associated with reactivity. That's what you do. That's how you practice that. So in that case, you're actually not orienting toward, I want to feel good all the time. You're like, you have to almost become obsessed with finding the reaction such that you actually don't feel good a lot of the time when you're working through that. Is that helpful? Cool. Okay, that was Gareth. Jennifer, hello. Hi. Jeff. The discursive mind seems to keep me from abiding in awareness. But then I realize that both the discursive mind and the thought that keeps me from awareness are actually happening in awareness. Yeah, totally. That's right. And if you put your attention there, can you find a dividing line between the thought of being, even the thought of being awareness, the concept of awareness, the label, and the sense of whatever you are right now, the sense of being aware, the thought that says it's keeping me from something, all of that. Just notice it's all the same space, all the same texture, all the same substance. And you can meditate as the substance or in the substance. Cool. Jeff, awareness is always there. It's weird that fact is so easy to overlook. Yeah, it is, right? It's easy to overlook because, partially I think because it's not interesting to the mind. Awareness, bare awareness, consciousness, presence, let's just even say, even the senses, the raw senses are not that interesting to the mind unless the conditions are right. So if all of a sudden in your sense field there's a member of the opposite sex you're very attracted to, well, all of a sudden that sense seems very interesting. But it's not the sense that's interesting. It's your overlay. It's your preconceived or precognitive reaction to the visual experience. It's the meaning you place on it. That's what's interesting, for sure. And there's a lot of meaning we place on situations like that, the opposite sex, or even if they're already our partner. Validation, the need for love, the need to be seen, heard, all those things. They're all things that get placed over the visual experience. So yeah, presence, bare awareness. Even I could use the term the unborn. The sense fields when they're experienced as they actually are. Those are uninteresting to the mind. They're uninteresting to the thought system because the thought system wants something. It wants something it can relate other things to. That's why I was kind of cautioning people earlier on concepts and labels and definitions, because the hungry mind loves that stuff. But it's something it can grasp onto. It can't make anything of presence, awareness, consciousness. So yeah, it is easy to overlook in that way, but only when we continue to value the thought system. Cool. Going back up. Frankie, in your book, you talk about the reflective nature of consciousness. Yes. The analogy metaphor you use is really helpful. Can you speak about that? The analogy of the reflective nature of consciousness. If you're talking about the pond surface, I don't want to go over the whole thing because I wrote about it and rewrote about it so many times. And the book is the best version of it I can do. But I can talk about it in a different way, and I will. If you notice any thought, like right now, just notice any thought, or just say to yourself, I'm going to wait for the next thought to appear. And then you just wait. Wait. So whenever a thought appears, what is it? Is it a narrative? Is it saying, oh, I don't get this? Or is it saying, oh, I get this? Or is it just a, I wonder what the thought is going to be? If that's the spontaneous thought that comes. It could be an image of some kind, right? So you notice it. Then you ask yourself, that thought that appeared, just notice what it is. Is that in the sound right here? Is it in the visual experience? Is that where it's emanating from? Body sensations? Look for it. It's not there, is it? And yet it has a certain kind of narrative to it, right? So for instance, maybe you had a thought that said, man, I'm hungry. I can't wait to eat later. Maybe you pictured yourself eating nachos. That image clearly didn't come out of the senses, as we just investigated. But it reflected something, right? You have to have had experience with nachos somewhere along the line to even have that thought. You have to have an experience of what the future seems to mean, that I can plan something and then eat later. Eating, you have to have an idea about eating. Like all these things are learned ideas. So these are just reflections. We can just reflect in a sort of out of time experience, which makes it feel like there's a past and a future. So that's the reflective nature of consciousness. The other aspect to the reflective nature of consciousness I'll bring up that helps to investigate is when you see that, when you see what I just said, and you're still noticing that thought, you can kind of investigate, well, where the heck is the thought then? Like, can you even define where it is? And where is the knower of the thought? Can you define where that is? That's a really good way to investigate. And you'll know by investigating this way and looking in this way, you'll instantly know whether there's a reflection occurring or no reflection. And you'll learn to distinguish between what's a reflection and what is not a reflection. That's a simple approach. Frankie, the moon's surface of the pond fractals light. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a long thing to explain, and my book explains it better than anything I'm going to say here because it took me a long time to write it. So there you go. If I think about something different to say about it, maybe I will. I like the little moon emojis. Those are fun. Ryan, what exactly are the emotion body and energy body in your experience? I've heard you mention them many times, but only just realized that I don't think I'm clear on what you mean by them. Oh, okay. Like I said earlier, this is one of those terminology things. You're not going to find something called the emotion body. You're not going to actually find it. You're not going to find anything called the ego. You're not going to find anything called the self. Any more than you're going to find anything called an object. You're just not going to find it. So these are provisional terms and concepts. They're not just terms, concepts. So the emotion body is the space so with that said, I guess in the relative sense, the emotion body is the space in which the body, there's a mapped sense experience in the body that correlates with certain conditions and creates a physiologic experience. That's an emotion. That's the emotion body. That's the space in which that seems to happen, which sometimes feels very present or like imminent right here, right now. Other times it feels like it's very much in the background. But the more you engage it, the more you investigate it and find out what the beliefs are surrounding these emotional experiences, the more it feels like something not hidden or somewhere else, but something that's actually more fundamental than thought to our experience. But thoughts do not believe this. Thoughts often don't want to believe that. But it's more fundamental to our experience. It just has the way of sort of going dormant into body sensations in a way. You can call it like pain body, I think is the way Eckhart Tolle describes it, is very good. The energetic body, I might say, is what you experience when there's no self-structure. And in the conventional sense, you could say there's a local phenomenon called me, because you can still talk about it. You don't forget who you are in the conventional sense, no matter who you are. Jim Newman, Tony Parsons, they know who they are. When someone calls their name, they answer. So in some sense, they still know, of course. When they're at the DMV and they call their name, they go up to the window. When they call other people's names, they don't, right? So there's some conventional sense of knowing that there's a local experience in this energy field that is me conventionally, okay? But in its most raw form, I might just call it the energetic body, because it's quite energetic. It's also not apart from anything in the environment. So it's a paradox that way. It's very seamless with the energy field as well, because really at that level, you can't see local experiences versus distant experiences as distinct either. So another paradox. It's very subtle. Often though, when people drop into that, or I don't know about drop into it, when the self-structure is out of the way, the energetics of it can be very intense usually for a while, and it calms down, but it can be very intense energetically. Then you kind of know what the energy body is. It's that. It's that collection of experiences that I'm having, but you probably aren't feeling, so to speak. So that's why I would say the energetic body instead of the energetic field. But it's also experientially seamless with the energetic field. And again, these are all conventional terms, even though they're subtle spiritual terms. So hold them lightly, please. Chris Gimon, Richmond Health, TRE facilitator in Australia, works with people over Zoom. It's a good resource for opening up the breath. There you go. Carrie Sewell, thank you. You're welcome. Eric, thanks for asking the dreams question. I'm experiencing the same thing ever since starting this unbinding thing. Yeah, I've gone through a lot of weird dreams in my life. I don't get them very much anymore. Like, they're very subtle. It just feels like consciousness, slightly altered maybe from the usual experience of consciousness, but it feels just as sort of unreal in a way as consciousness does, non-solid. Occasionally I'll have a formed dream though, and it's fun, but it's not very often. You're welcome, Emma. Leah, currently in a teaching that on one hand is helping things move quickly, but on the other hand, they say some wild things. All good though. I find it interesting. That's how it goes. Totally. You can learn a lot from some people who may say some things in a way that doesn't resonate with you. Maybe you just don't understand it, or it's, after a shift, it might be more clear. Other times you may actually know, like, yeah, that's not right on for me. But other things and other practices that they're involved with, or the group setting, is very powerful still. It's very valuable. As long as it's not like red flags, which I don't think that's what you're talking about. But yeah, some people have ways of seeing the relative world that I don't agree with necessarily. I don't see it that way. But it doesn't mean that they can't transmit. Sunship. It's a great name. I've heard you speak about this before, but you went to medical school after awakening. Yes. Did you not feel like you had to push yourself to get through? That's a really hard thing to talk about, because in one sense it's even harder because you can't push yourself. It doesn't mean you don't notice the I don't know what you'd call it, the challenge of the growth or the restructuring of I don't know, motivations and energies and so forth. because it's a massive restructuring to go through a process like that, or actually any training process. And when there's, you can almost say there's a part of you that knows it doesn't matter. You could usually just go meditate for the rest of your life. I don't know. It can be energetically a little gritty. I don't have a good way of talking about this because you don't push yourself because you can't. And you almost wish you could have that back, right? That part of yourself that could push yourself and tell yourself a dream about the future and how much it's going to reward you or something. But I couldn't do that. So it was hard in some ways, but it also felt very right in other ways. Paul, the audio with my fancy headphones is considerably better. Sounds like a digital flatline, full, rich, and spacious. Is that, so you're talking about the audio that I'm using right here? Just curious. I haven't changed my audio. I use the Shure mic, but I'm glad it sounds good. Diego, on one pointed approach, not resonating. When I ask, what is moo? I'm realizing I have the expectation. Okay, that's the problem. Don't let expectations sneak in, and don't ask what is moo. If you're using moo, just moo. Don't worry about the what is it. Don't worry about the question. You've already absorbed the question. Just don't separate from moo at all. Don't separate from it. And the moment a thought comes that says, oh, I think this is going to happen or that's going to happen, notice that's the mind trying to separate, trying to get away, actually. No, just right back to moo. Just moo. Don't separate yourself from it at all. Stay with it. How does having goals fit into all this? They're just another conventional texture. Like anything, paying the bills, all that. One sec. What I will say changes is, I don't know if that used to be like this for me. Maybe it did, but probably to some degree. And I think certainly it is for some people because they tell me that there's like an obsession with goals, a thought-based obsession with goals. Like you're thinking about goals all the time. You're afraid of not hitting your goals. You're like, if it's really heady in that way, that is what goes away. Like conventionally speaking, I can still make a goal easily. But there's not a thought about like, oh, I need to make a goal. What happens if I don't hit it? It's not like that. It's just like, it just gets done. So like, I don't even know where it comes from. All of a sudden I thought of buying an artwork from Cryptic, and I was like, and I could give it away on the channel and we could have a contest about poetry. Like it just came like that. And that was it. And then I just did it and I put it up online and you could call that a goal. There's a goal of 25,000 viewers or whatever, but it was just like a series of inclinations that fell into place very quickly out of the blue. That's how I experience things, even goals and big choices and stuff. Okay. Can you speak more to faith in the process? I fought tooth and nail to escape this as a child. It feels visceral and raw. Like, why do I want this? The mind wants, the faith thing is interesting. I'll just say this for you because of the way you asked the question. When it comes to faith, I think the way I might use the term is so different than say like a Christian or a Western oriented religious person generally. Not that there's anything wrong with what they're doing. It's just very different. So faith, I think in those spaces is very belief based. Faith for me is exactly not belief based. It's faith in what can take you beyond beliefs. That's a really important distinction, I think. So I'll leave it at that. Yawning with the Kundalini energy. That's interesting. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're almost done. In your chapter on attention, you write that you can modulate your attention. That to me postulates a separate self that has control and can do modulation. Isn't that counterproductive? No, not at all. It's not counterproductive. You don't need to ask who does anything to do it because there's no one doing it. So the thought that says, oh, well, what the thought's really saying is, oh, well, I can't do that because if I do that, then I'll believe. Do you see how laden that belief system itself is with self? Does that make sense? This is one of the sort of challenges I have with the what do they call it? The uncompromising non-dual message, or whatever they call it, which I wouldn't call it uncompromising, but that's what they call it. One of the problems with that is it does this exact thing to people. It puts people in their head about doership. If you're experiencing doership, that's fine. You don't need to try to eradicate yourself of it, because it's not going to happen. Doesn't mean you can't modulate your attention. Doesn't mean you can't meditate. Doesn't mean you can't inquire. And then Tony Parsons, I've heard him say, well, who's going to inquire? Tony, you don't need to ask who's going to inquire. It doesn't matter. You should know the answer to that question. Inquiry just happens. Modulating attention just happens. Eating happens. Farting happens. Sleeping happens. Waking up happens. You don't need to figure out who, because it's a question he'll never have an answer to. And it will put you in your head. Cool. That's a good question. But also a little heady, just so you know. It's a little bit like, what is this definition? What is that one? Looking for contradictions. It's very analytical, which is fine. But the first big movement of realization, you have to go beyond the analytical mind that's trying to understand everything to keep itself afloat, to keep you bound into the concepts. I'm pushing you a little bit, but it's important to understand that, really. Like, you can define concepts to the rest of your life. You can read the suttas. You can learn all the stages of awakening realization, learn about no self. You can learn all that. That's not anything close to what it feels like or what it's experienced as to release from it. It's very, very different. And yet the questions are good questions. I'm not saying they're not. I just want to caution you that, like, be careful with too much analysis, because you don't need any analysis to wake up. None. Maharishi said that he was awake and in deep sleep at the same time. What do you think he meant by that? Does that resonate with you? It does. I think that there are people, and I've definitely experienced it to some degree, where it's like, well, okay, first of all, I suspect that there's a historical reason for that. I can't think of the name of the Upanishad right now. Starts with an M, but there's an Upanishad where it says that's the litmus test for enlightenment, that you're aware in waking, dreaming, and sleep states, and transcendence. Like, there's like 4 states here, and there's awakeness in all of them, as if they're kind of equal or something. And that's often quoted as a litmus test in like traditional Advaita Vedanta for enlightenment. I don't quote that as a litmus test. So there is that, and it's likely why he said it. What his experience was, I have no idea. But I think it does happen where you can be in deep sleep, not dream sleep, but deep sleep, and be actually aware. But it's not the thing I want to be really careful with talking about this is, some people would reify that as awareness, like bare awareness. I don't think it is. Because if you ask somebody what they're aware of, it's sound. They hear the body breathing. If you really push them on it, there may be no thoughts at all, but it's the sound. And that lines up very clearly with like Bahya Sutta. In the herd, there's only the herd. There's not an awareness of it outside of it. And that if you have that kind of experience of bare present clarity with the sense fields, then it is available in deep sleep as well. But it's not consciousness. It's not like you're thinking. If you're thinking, you're not in deep sleep by definition. If you're dreaming, you're not in deep sleep by definition. So that's what I think. Mallory, you feel better. Good. You're welcome. Eric, I once had a very profound experience of no self that changed me forever. Since that time, I feel I've dissolved many filters, but also feel more stuck in the illusion. That's really interesting. I don't know what you mean by that. I would really ask you what you mean by the illusion you're stuck in. What does that mean? What is the nature of that? What are you referencing when you say I'm stuck in an illusion right now? Cernish, I find these days conflict or emotional turmoil makes everything expand in such a way that I enjoy it. Yeah, that's awesome. That's maturity, right? That's spiritual maturity. That's equanimity. And yet I still choose the smoother path when I can. Not really a question, just what's up. Yeah, makes sense. Jack, AI is progressing at a phenomenal rate. True. Some experts say it will surpass human level intelligence in the next 5 to 10 years. I honestly don't know it hasn't. Like, what area of cognition can we not train AI to do better than a human? Large language models? What is most human processing that comes out in language is language model, right? Memory, problem solving. I don't know. But am I concerned that lead to an existential threat to humanity? Not really. I think, it's interesting. I wonder if some of the logistical issues are less to do with how intelligent it is, for instance, more to do with how much autonomy it has. I watched a criticism a while back by a guy who actually did work. He might have been a CEO of one of the big AI companies, and he got scared and he left, and he he's like kind of lives off grid now. But one of the things he said that we did wrong, and that in the years past, the AI experts and scientists said we should never do is we shouldn't let it loose on the internet, on the wide internet. We've already done that. There are a couple other things we've already done that were probably not good ideas. But I think this isn't really to do with awakening, but if it's just something on that's coded out there, how much autonomy does it really have? You can unplug it. Now, if it starts creating viruses that humans are not smart enough to fix, or viruses that talk to other AI viruses or bots that are all over the internet now, I could see that happening. And it probably will happen to some degree. But it's a digital threat, and we have a lot of stuff tied into the digital world, right? Almost everything. So those are concerning things, but they don't have physical autonomy. It's not like we're downloading AI into robots and giving them rights to live in houses and make choices and reproduce themselves and, play the stock market and stuff like that. Who knows? Maybe in the future someone will come up with that idea or will do that. I don't know. But it's not like they're autonomous entities walking around in the physical world. It's all very digital. So I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know what kind of digital safeguards we need to put in place to prevent AI from getting into contact with really important systems like financial systems and government systems, things like that for safety. That's where I think a lot of emphasis should go right now, probably by the governments themselves. Maybe not even because AI itself is going to be some entity that comes alive and wants to do us harm, but because there are already people out there who create viruses on purpose to cause destruction. And when they have AI behind them, they can use AI to do that in a more effective way. I think that the potential for damage is huge. But I don't have any fear of it for some reason, just like anything else. Yeah. It definitely has the potential to do a lot of good as well, AI. It's really how it's used, right? KL101. I'm in a place of no will to do anything. Totally lazy, and I've always been a busy person. Just enough effort to get up, put clothes on, like a complete emptying. That happens. People definitely go through that. And it's okay. It's totally okay. Especially if you were chronically busy, chronically overworked, maybe a workaholic or whatever. Sometimes you just need a realignment, and life is going to give you that realignment. It's going to slow you down for a while to, realign with what you've realized. So be patient, take care of your responsibilities, but be patient and know that sometimes these very low energy states are okay. Even repelled from teachings. That's not uncommon as well. I've seen that a lot. This. After an initial shift, how does one determine if an external condition should be changed to keep from moving forward, such as high pressure job? Talk to somebody you trust. If you don't know, if your intuition doesn't tell you what to do, first of all, ask your intuition. Ask yourself, okay, what is my real intuition? What do I really need to do here? And if it's you need to change your job, this job's not good for you, it never has been, then maybe that's what you need to do, or a relationship challenge or whatever. If you really don't know, and sometimes you don't, ask a trusted friend, even a therapist, get some advice from others and see, for honest reflections on what's going on, and see if that does need to be addressed. What I find is over time, you'll get less and less in your head about decisions. They just kind of happen very spontaneously, but it can take some time before that occurs, I think. Favorite musicians? Oh gosh. I like all kinds of musicians. I listen to a lot of music where I don't know the musician's name. There's a playlist on Spotify called SciChill. I really like that, but there's no lyrics in the music. I like binaural type meditation music sometimes. Musicians I love 60s era music a lot, like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, some of the Rolling Stones I really, really like. Fleetwood Mac, Bob Dylan, mostly for his lyrics, to be honest, but who do I like so much? I like so many types of music. I like Tool. I like Metallica. I like some heavy metal stuff. Yeah, there's a lot. I'd be listing music for quite some time. I even like classical music. Love Beethoven. Hi, on your coffee break, Ashley. Mosquitoes are actually vampires, only creatures I feel no qualms about smacking. Well, they are dangerous. They do kill a lot of humans. It's true. Falling asleep. Good night. All right. Catch you later, Ashley. Coastal Cliffs, Working Bee. Catch you later. All right. See ya. Frankie, you're welcome. Lynn Lavalite. Isn't the energy body the space in which we also experience bodily sensations? I would say the energy body is accessed. Well, you could say that. Yeah, you can have any definition you want. I'm not saying my definition's right. Again, the more subtle something is, the more it really matters to hear it in context. It's very provisional, the more subtle it is. So it's very hard to make these distinctions and say that this is the right distinction, because I could see exactly what you're saying too. All right. Quantum theories and all. Yeah, fascinating stuff. Very fascinating. It's interesting. I find some people really have an aversion to like talking about that, like relating awakening and realization to like quantum principles, but they very much align actually. So I don't know why that is. One physicist told me, he said some people think it's too extreme. Like when you talk about quantum states and you talk about quantum physics in general, you're talking about, let's say, events that are so fast and so small, like unimaginably minuscule. There's no way we could like pick them up in the moment, of course, for sure. But it doesn't mean that the principles of like indeterminacy, for instance, don't align extremely well with my experience, because they do. So it's very interesting that it's not like I can give you a physics equation to wake up. That doesn't work like that. Or understanding physics doesn't make you wake up either. But it doesn't mean that with deeper realization, some of the principles like special theory of relativity, for instance, the way light experiences time and space, lines up exactly with my experience. So there you go. That's my experience of it. But I think it's fascinating too. I love that stuff. There's a really good movie called Everything and Nothing by a physicist. It's awesome. Really good movie. I've seen it a handful of times. Check it out. William, energetically, do you perceive equanimity as the source of the gravity which dissolves conditions? That's an interesting question. I would say conditions don't dissolve, but your identity structures responding to conditions in a conditioned way, of course, in a sort of stereotyped way, that does dissolve. And equanimity is a big part of that. Without equanimity, or I should say without really addressing gross reactivity, it's very difficult to get to those subtle associations between conditions and the body energetics. That's my answer for that. That was a good question. Many thanks. You're welcome. Okay. Thanks, Dave and Elaine. Thanks, Eric. Oh, okay. One more thing here. By illusion, I mean my perception now is dualistic, even though I have seen that there is no separation. Okay. The non-dual experience isn't available directly. Okay. Yeah, that happens. You definitely get a taste of it often early on. Often before awakening, you can have a taste of non-dual, but it will become very obvious. Like when you said that it's not available directly, it will be available directly at all times, like it is right now. Experientially, it is for you too. It is for everybody, of course. You're welcome, Eric. Thanks, Mallory. I hope I do too. I'm actually fine. It's not. I think today's maybe the worst day of the cold, but we'll see. I just feel bad for having to talk to you guys, and you have to listen to my scratchy voice. Jonathan, Elaine Radique Mystique has been very helpful, particularly her Trilogy de la Mort. I like the sound of that. Yeah, you guys check that out and tell me what you think. Okay, cool. Thanks, Angelo. You're welcome, Lisette. Nice to see you all. Very fun. We have 75 people on right now. So, yeah, good times. And the double barrel is... When is the double barrel? Is it Sunday? Coming up, yeah. Sunday, yeah. Sorry these are so close together. The weeks this month lined up funny. So this was the available weekend for a lot of stuff. Yeah. You're very welcome, Jörg. Practical value of non-duality. Oh gosh. All suffering is because of the sense of space, time, and objects. I mean, gosh, I could talk for a long time on that. That's a really good question, though. So the practical value, or actually, why does suffering arise from having a sense of time, space, and objects? Okay, objects specifically. Well, we don't. I'll give you one discrete and specific example that's a big one, because it's pervasive in our lives. When we don't recognize that the person we love the most, let's say our partner, or maybe our children. It's usually our partner and our children. This comes up around. When we don't recognize that, when we feel attachment to them, when we feel like we want them to be a certain way for us, even when we feel in love with them in a lot of emotional ways, we don't realize that what we're actually engaging is an object of our own mind. That's a really hard thing to see early in realization, and later on it becomes very hard not to see it. To love somebody unconditionally, you have to see them. And so that means you have to not see them as an object. There you go. Okay. So fun to talking to y'all. These were great questions. It was a very good range of questions too, like a nice spread of topics. And we ended just on time, I think. So y'all are awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I think I gave all the announcements at the beginning. I think we're good. And yeah. Y'all take care. See you soon.